Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM.
So I love that you can't treat all students the same. 100% agree. I had a behavior classroom for years as well. You can't treat teachers the same either. So I think we make that mistake a lot, is that we give these accommodations and we expect teachers to do that and then they can't. So my example that I've used is I was working with a social studies teacher in middle school, 8th grade, and one of my students with autism, we had gone over his IEP with her. I mistakenly thought that she understood the accommodations and what he needed. She was one of those teachers that had everyone sit alphabetically, right in rows. And he liked to sit closest to the door. Like whatever seat was kind of closest to the door, that was his jam. And so we'd already gone over that. She, I thought, understood it. And then he went off to class out of my classroom and he came back less than 10 minutes later. And I kind of gave him a minute and I was like, hey, like, what's going on? He's like, I'm not going back in there. She doesn't like me. She's not having it, whatever. Okay. So talked to the teacher later, come to find out she had tried to sit him in an assigned seat, even though we had already talked about he likes to sit closest to the door. This is like his thing. Like we'd already talked about it. But she was like, but he's just going to do, you said that, but this is what he's going to do. So not understanding. And he didn't go back in that classroom for the rest of the year. So I had to learn how to teach 8th grade social studies.
Everybody in here, and administrators, and we don't like to talk about it, it's another elephant. We know that teacher. And everyone has had that teacher. They call themselves old school, or I'm not going to change this, or, you know, I had we were having a behavior intervention training, and a teacher told me, like, well, and this is an elementary teacher, mind you, I got to prepare this kid for the real world, you know. So, and I said, okay, I'm here doing a behavior training. How is that working for you right now? Obviously, it's not working. We have to work with administrators, and I've been fortunate in schooling, and I have to say this as a behavior teacher, I had amazing administrators who helped me. And the truth is, and this is a sad truth, there were teachers who my students would never go to. And that's just a fact. It is what it is. It's not something we should be proud of, but it is. There was a teacher who was teaching a, what do we call it? Like, you know, gym and art and all of those classes. I heard her say out loud while talking to teachers one day, out loud, and was proud of it. She said, if I wanted to deal with special education students, I would have gotten a special education degree. She said that out loud and was proud of it. And I said, my students will never go in her room. And I talked to my administration, and they never did. The thing about it is, they hired another teacher who was teaching the same thing she was teaching, and I don't think she ever realized it until that other teacher started getting some of my students, because they were more open to dealing with those students. So again, like you said, every teacher is not the same, and then we do have some situations where I had teachers that even though the kid did not need an EA in any of their other classes, I sent them to that room because that teacher needed that level of support. And then there are other teachers that I could not send at all. So that is a fact.
None of my students went back to her class, but but I think it taught me a good lesson in how to work with teachers and how to make sure that they understood really what the accommodations were, because some teachers, it was based out of fear. They just didn't know. They didn't know how to do the accommodations. And so then once they knew I was going to walk alongside them and help them, then it got a lot better.
And there's some that don't know, and then there's some that aren't going to do it anyway. I had a teacher, her daughter was autistic. She understood some of the things. Her daughter had graduated. She knew what it was like in the accommodations that she refused to make any of those accommodations for one of my autists. I apologized to that parent for putting the student in that room because it was so terrible. So yeah, sometimes you do your best and you think you're helping, but sometimes they know and still don't do.
I think there can be a slippery slope with that.
Because I think sometimes things like just not wanting to sit a kid by a door who then didn't have access. I'm sure they went to a different class, but not every school has extra teachers or classes. But then it's almost like you're positively reinforcing that teacher's negative behavior.
Right. And that's why I said, you notice what I started with. I had amazing administrators because it has to be a team. You can't, sometimes I know I felt like it. Well, I kind of was. As a behavior teacher, you're the only one of your kind in the building. It's you. And I know some of our structured setting teachers feel the same way. It's just you. Nobody else knows what you go through. And I always give a hand to our structured setting teachers. I didn't know what they went through until one day I had one couple of months, a lady was pregnant and I had to help step in the structured setting. I've never been touched so much in my whole life. Never. I did not understand. And you know, when you get touched, it's not like they wash their hands and sanitize before they touch you. No, they don't. But to her point, it's a team effort. And I think one of those things you have to talk to your administrators because you cannot just keep kids. Maybe that's the only teacher in the building that teaches that class. And you cannot get away from them. Some of our districts, as she was mentioned, we have big districts and we have small districts. One student came to me in the behavior room and the only reason she was there is because she came from a small district and the only 4 core teachers were the only ones she could have, and those 4 teachers had decided that they didn't like her. They had come together, didn't like her, they did not want her in their building. And so, and she was just a little sassy girl. She was sassy, she gave you a little lip, but that's all it was. So I kept her until I knew she didn't have to go back in that building because that's what was best for the student. So, and she went to a high school that had more options. So she could go to different teachers. If one didn't like her, she could go to the other. So again, I love your questions because questions let me know you're paying attention and that you're getting it. But we're going to move on to our behavior strategies.
We spent the first half of this talking about, again, what I think is the most important thing is taking care of yourself, having good relationships with your students, and really creating a positive environment for kids. They've got to like you to work for you. And I know, people think, oh, they don't have to like me. If you really want them to do the things that you ask them to do, they need to like you. Because, it's the same with us. If you like your administrator, you're going to go above and beyond for that administrator. If you don't, I might do the bare minimum. But, yeah.
We know who we are.
So now we're going to talk to you a little bit about behavioral strategies. And I was pretty aware when I put these together that these are things that you can do that don't require money, they don't require time, they're things that you can do pretty easily, but if they don't come naturally to you, you're going to have to put some thought into it. Here's a whole table of a lot of behavior strategies, behavior interventions that you can use. And they're broken up into antecedent interventions, things you can do before the behavior occurs, teaching interventions, teaching those good behaviors, and then consequence interventions for things that you can do after the behavior occurs to teach them how to do the right thing next time. So on here, we've got several things that you can look up. I'm not going to talk about every single one of these, but these are just some examples of good research-based interventions. And when I'm talking about these interventions, these are not things that I've gone on Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest to come up with. These are actual research-based interventions that are proven to work when they're implemented correctly. And that's the big part, when they're implemented correctly. We've got behavior momentum, choice making, environmental arrangements, priming, non-contingent reinforcements, visual supports, and the PREMAC principle, behavior contracts, shaping, functional communication training, prompting, and token economies. And then under the consequence interventions, we have differential reinforcement, extinction, interruption and redirection, response blocking, and reinforcing precursor behaviors.
And some of these things, you guys that don't know these terms, you may be doing already. These are just putting a name to it. Such as priming, that's like just simply preparing a student for what's coming next or a change in activity. That's helpful to a lot of our students if we are preparing them. Okay, Jim, we got 5 minutes left before we move to our next activity. Some of you are already doing those things. Prompting, we talked about earlier, just making it clear what you want the student to do, not focusing on the behavior, but just focusing on what you need them to do. Instead of saying, hey, Johnny, stop talking, and stop talking can create an argument, because then Johnny will say, well, I wasn't the only one talking, or she was talking first, or why are you always picking on me? But if you say, hey, Johnny, we're on number 5, can't argue with that. So those are some things that you probably already do, but these are just putting them in behavioral terms.
Whoops. So the first one is the one that Larry just pointed out, priming. This is so simple. All this means is telling the student what's coming up next. Telling them, okay, before we go in the hallway, what are the rules in the hallway? Keep your hands at your sides, have a quiet mouth, walk in a straight line. Reminding them before you do it what they need to do. Remember the rules in the cafeteria. You can use priming with other interventions. I'm sure most of you have heard of social stories. Social stories can work great with priming. These are the things you do in the cafeteria. I had a student that we would talk about as a group. We would have a social story every morning that we talked about as a group, and this was when I taught in that autism classroom. What are the steps as we go through the cafeteria? We'd talk about it. Then that's the way I primed them. So when we got to the cafeteria, they had already heard the steps. That didn't mean they did them all perfectly, but they knew what was coming up. They knew what to expect. Not knowing is one of my hardest things. I went to a new doctor the other day. I get anxious about that, not knowing what to expect. What's the office going to look like when I get there? Not knowing how to handle social situations can be really hard for our kids. So if we can let them know what to expect as much as we can before they get there, we're likely to reduce that anxiety and decrease some behaviors.
Dr. Clark did some priming for us in terms of even being presenters. She said, hey, these are some things that you might need to look at and to do, give us a picture of what was happening. That was priming. We got a priming email and a priming pep talk this morning. So it works for adults as well.
Changes in routine or procedures are also huge for some of our students on the spectrum. If you know that there's a field trip next Thursday, start talking about it today so that they can prepare for that field trip next Thursday. If there's going to be a change in schedule, start talking about the pep rally that's coming up and how that's going to affect their schedule or their daily routine. But priming is also huge for high school kids. Just telling them, okay, your schedule's different. Like some of our high schools are on a block schedule and then they're not, or then we have a snow day, so we change how our schedules are. Those letting them know can be extremely helpful. It's helpful for me. I want to know what my day is going to look like before I leave my house. So just knowing what's coming up is super helpful. And that's an easy strategy that you can do for all of your students, not just kids with autism. And remember, these strategies, they may be helpful for kids with autism, but they're helpful for everybody. Yes, ma'am.
On priming, I'll just say, I'm talking about my mom again. My mom is not one of those people you drop by and visit her house. No, don't do that. She needs a little priming. So you're going to let her know in advance when you're coming, what's going on, what's going to happen when you're there. Adults use priming too, but she's an example of that.
I was just going to say that with priming, it works really well with kids. You have to, before you do it, you really have to get to spend the time getting to know your kids, because it can have you could prime and go, oh, I've done great, and then it has the opposite effect. Just as an example, my daughter is a second grader. They take a test getting ready to prepare them for third grade TCAPs. They primed them for about a week and a half. My daughter didn't sleep for a week and a half. All she wanted to talk about was the test. She was anxious. She'd wake up in the middle of the night. Her medicine that helps her sleep wasn't helping her sleep that whole week. You really, I always tell other teachers that I work with, before you do something, know the kid you're using it with. Because that kid, it may have the opposite effect. And if you start seeing it have the opposite effect even a little, or the parent says, I'm seeing a change at home, you need to rethink it, because it can really have a detrimental effect to them.
And some of that also comes with, we let them know what's coming up, but now maybe we need to help them handle what's coming up as well. Just telling them may not be enough. It might be for some kids, okay, now I know my schedule's gonna change and that's cool, I'm good with it. But some kids may need to understand the process behind it, or how can I help them with that change, or how can I alleviate some of that anxiety that's gonna come with this change, because you're right, some kids then become obsessed with it. In 2 weeks, we're going on a field trip. Are we going on a field trip today? When are we going to go on the field trip? How's that going to work? Am I going to have to wear this shirt when I go on that field trip? So help them talk through that as well. You can't just spring it on them. We're going on a field trip on Thursday and that's it. Priming's a little deeper than that. Good. The next one's non-contingent reinforcement. This is so easy, and this is a big fancy term for just saying, give them the reinforcement freely. Make it available when they want it to be available. And this is what happens if our students, maybe they need breaks, but we don't give them breaks often enough. We only give them a break when they throw their stuff around the room, and then they don't have to do that assignment because they got out of doing it. If we can give them breaks on the front end before they need to act out to get that need met, then we're less likely to see the behaviors. This is giving them the things that they need freely and frequently, so that they don't have to act out to get that thing that they need.
You guys just had a non-contingent reinforcement. You had a break. It was built in. You didn't earn it, and we could even see some of you yawning a little bit, but it was a break that was just given freely. You didn't have to earn it. And again, things that we're talking about work with kids, work with adults as well.
It's not always breaks. Attention is a big one too. We have students a lot that I see, okay, they have to do these things, then they get some iPad time because they love the iPad. So you go and you say, okay, you can go over to your desk and play on your iPad. They love the iPad, but they also want to play with you. So when you give kids breaks, sometimes they need attention during those breaks. You can't, okay, go play on the iPad, because I love scrolling through my phone, but I can only do that for so often, and then I get bored. It's the same with our kids. So attention is another thing that you can give them non-contingently. That just means they don't have to do anything to get it. They get it whenever you see that they need it. Kid starts to get a little squirrely or is moving around in their desk, and you come over and say, oh, wow, I really love how you're working on that problem. I just gave them attention. And that's all they need to feel like, okay, I know what I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing a good job. Give them that attention frequently and freely. Breaks and attention are the big ones. Doesn't cost anything to give a kid some extra attention.
Also, when you give it not just as a reward, some students, when they get it as a reward, never want to give it up, even though they've earned it. You get 15 minutes of iPad time. After 16 minutes, no, I'm not letting you have it back. If you do it intermittently like this, they learn, okay, I can give it back because I know I'm going to get it back later some other time, instead of it being a power struggle as a reward. So that is the best thing that I have seen, when you just not just use it as a reward, but you let them have it freely at intermittent times. It creates that need that I can't ever let it go.
Yeah.
I just thought.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, because she's absolutely right. It stops them from, oh my gosh, if I give this back to you, I'm never going to get it again, or I'm going to have to work really, really hard to get this back again, and I don't want to put all that effort into getting this back again, so I'm just not going to give it back to you. If you can give it to them freely sometimes, well, then they know they're going to get it again later. Everything does not always have to be, I've got to do so much work to earn everything all the time. So non-contingent reinforcement is great. And again, free, it's simple, but you do have to know how often you have to give it to a kid. So to determine how often you need to give this non-contingent reinforcement, whatever it is, you see how often you have those problem behaviors. How often in a class period does a student engage in the problem behaviors? If it's 4 times in the class period, then we need to give them non-contingent reinforcement 5 times to stop the need to act out to get what they want. Okay? We want to give it to them more often than they act out so that they can get it and not have the need to act out to get the thing they need. Does that make sense? Okay.
I don't know if we're going to talk about contingent reinforcement, not sure, but on the contingent reinforcement where they're actually earning the breaks, don't make it ridiculous. Don't be like, oh, you finished these 35 problems. Come on, slow down. You know, let's make sure that when we have contingent reinforcement, that it is reasonable. And reasonable varies by student. If you have a student that only finishes 10 problems for class, don't give them 20. It needs to be reasonable based on what they normally perform. So again, you can call it a contingent reinforcement, but if it's something so ridiculous that they're not going to earn it, you're missing the point.
The next one's functional communication training. And this is just a fancy way of teaching kids to ask for what they need. A lot of times we have kids that tell us and we think we know better. You know, they'll say, oh, I'm not doing that, or get away from me, or whatever. And I'm not going to get away from you. Well, what are you doing? You're engaging in a power struggle with this kid and he told you he needs a break for a minute. It's okay to give it to them. Give them what they ask for, and then we'll figure out how to shape it into a way that they ask for it more appropriately. But we have to listen to the kids. So many times they tell us what they need, and we think we know better. And then we end up with a huge, severe, explosive behavior because we don't want them to get their way. Is that what it is? We don't want them to get their way. We don't want them to win. But I think Larry is the one that has said, what are they winning? What are you winning? What is there to be won? Now, yeah, now we've lost instructional time because we've had these major behaviors when they told you what you needed, what they needed, and you thought that they didn't actually need that. Listen to what they tell you. Reinforce when they ask you appropriately, okay? So first, we're going to listen to what they tell us to do, what they tell us they need. Get away from me. That means I need a break. I need you to leave me alone. Or they could be tapping their pencil or poking at their friend. They need attention, okay? I'm going to give them some attention. They may need a think, pair, share activity so they can talk to their friend for 2 seconds and then get back to task. But they'll show you what they need, and then you need to shape that so they can ask for it appropriately. Then you can teach them, I need to take a break. Here's my break card. Here's a signal that I can show you when I need to leave. And then we reinforce the communication that we want to see, okay?
And back to you, I think it was, the kid destroying the pencil and shavings and all of that all around them, but still working. Maybe you can shape that. He obviously has a need. So maybe you can shape that to him engaging in something more appropriately. What you don't do is say, stop right now, clean up all that mess. And you're forcing it into a more problematic situation because the student is obviously that destroying, even though he's working, is meeting some type of need. So shaping that, and he's communicating something to us. So we need to know what that is and shape his behavior into something more appropriate.
The next one's a token economy. How many of you have used a token economy in your lives? And how many of you think that this does not work? No? Everybody? Good. Usually I have people that say, oh, we've tried that and it doesn't work. We've tried that and it just doesn't work. And I will tell you that some kind of token economy absolutely will work because our entire world is run on a token economy. Okay? Money is a token that you exchange for something that you want. Our entire world runs on a token economy, so it does work. If we use it correctly, it will work. Okay? And a token economy, what I have up here is a picture of a token board, but it doesn't have to be a token board. It can be a Post-it note with tally marks on your desk. It can be tally marks on the board if the kid doesn't want to have that attention put on them. You can do it in a lot of ways so that the kid knows what's happening, you know what's happening, but nobody else around them knows what's happening. It does not have to be a fancy token board. It doesn't have to be a point sheet. Point sheets are another form of a token economy, but it doesn't have to look that way. All it is a behavior change system consisting of a list of target behaviors with tokens, points, drawings, something, and a menu of backup reinforcers that tokens can be exchanged for. So the 4 things that you really need to have for a token economy, the first one is defining what you want the student to do. Okay? If you're not doing that and you're just catching them being good and giving them tokens whenever you think they're doing a good job, the kid is not learning what behaviors you're reinforcing. Okay? Today, I just have to sit in my seat and you gave me a token. Tomorrow, I have to do an entire worksheet before you'll give me a token. That's confusing. And like Larry said earlier, we've got to be direct with what we want kids to do. So before you even start a token economy with a student, they have to know what behaviors they have to do to get a token for. My kids, when they were really little, dinner was a big fiasco. It just drove me crazy. They were getting up, they were not eating, they were doing all the things. So I created a list of the things you have to do to earn a point. And it was just a point. And then you can have whatever you want for dessert when we're done if you get all your points. But it was very specific. Every 2 minutes you have to stay in your seat. You have to eat something and you have to engage in some kind of conversation with your family. And those were the 3 things that they had to do. They knew what was expected. They did those things, and really immediately, it was like that day, our dinner time was so much better. It happened that fast, but they knew what was expected and they knew how to earn a token. That's the biggest, that's number 1. The kids have got to know what they need to do to earn a token. You've got to choose what kind of token system you're going to do. Are you going to use a token board like this one above? And if you do, what are your tokens going to be? Are they going to be stars like you have up here? Are they going to be tally marks? Those are easy. Those don't get destroyed. You can just put a token anywhere or a tally mark anywhere. Are they going to be Thomas the Train because this friend really likes Thomas the Train? If you do that, that's great, and they may love to earn the tokens, but you have to be careful because the token can't be more reinforcing than what they're exchanging it for. Okay? They may not ever want to give the token up to get the thing if they like the tokens better. So choose your token and choose how often they're going to get that token. And like Larry said also, if you're making them work for an entire class period and all they get in advance is, or in return is one M&M when they're done, well, that's not really, that's not enough for me, okay? I want a bigger payout than that. So another thing that I have noticed, if kids are starting to act up, a lot of times it's because they're not being reinforced often enough. Okay, make those tokens come quickly at first and then fade it out, then thin it, but they've got to buy into this system as well. Okay, we all work for that money, we all work for that token that we get every month. Okay, we only get paid every month. I don't know about all of you, but once a month was a little of an adjustment for me, coming from 2 weeks to a month. If I only got paid once a year, I might rethink how much I'm willing to work to only get paid once a year. So start to think about that with your kids. Am I giving them that reinforcement often enough to keep them engaged, to keep it something that they want to do? Because if not, they're going to lose interest. The other thing is the backup reinforcers. What are they earning for reinforcement? If they don't care about what they're earning, they're not going to be willing to work for it either. change it up. I love Diet Cokes, but if you gave me a Diet Coke 5 times a day, I wouldn't want the 5th one. You know, I'm over it. Same with our students. Also, if you're going to make me work for a bag of chips, but I can go to lunch and get a bag of chips for free because I have money in my account, I don't really care about the bag of chips you're giving me because I can get it somewhere else without even working for it. So do short little preference assessments with the kids. Ask them, what do you want to earn? And honestly, most of the time what they want doesn't cost any money. Most of the time, you can get it just spending time with you. I want to have lunch in your room with a friend. I want to do extra time at recess. I would like 5 minutes of time to look at my phone. I want to listen to music while I work. Those are things that don't cost you anything, and high school kids like to do. And I'll be honest, high school's hard because they can go out and get most of everything they want without getting it from you. So high school's difficult, but the social aspect of that is something that you can really tap into with high school kids. They like to spend time with their friends or get out of doing work. So you can give them a way to get out of doing work. Here's a no homework pass. Here's a cut my assignment in half card or something like that.
Don't call on me, Claire.
Yeah, don't call on me. So. And the other thing with the token economy that I see that kind of makes it fail is that you don't give that reinforcement immediately. I've earned all my tokens, but I earned extra recess time, and recess is not for another 2 hours. Well, I've earned it, but now I've got 2 hours that I'm not doing anything before I get my reinforcement. What happens during those 2 hours? You know, what if they have a meltdown? What if they don't engage in great behavior for 2 hours? And now lunchtime comes around, am I going to give it to them? Well, they earned it. I'd be really upset if Dr. Ralston didn't give me my paycheck because I was 5 minutes late one day. I earned it. And now I'm not going to get paid for it. So if you want the kids to buy into your token economy, you have to give them what they earned, and that's why it has to come fast. Okay?
And make sure that it's reasonable. Make sure it's a token that you can give them every single time. So I'm not a fan of these, I'll go buy you some McDonald's or some of those things. Circumstances may occur and you may not be able to make that thing happen. So make sure that it's a token that they can get every time, and that you can make sure that whatever resources you have in your building, you can make sure that it happens. Because if you make it too difficult, it may not happen, and then you've lost their trust. Yes, ma'am?
In my room, I have a prize wheel, so it looks like the Wheel of Fortune wheel, and each category is on there. Each student starts the day out with 2 of the little paper tickets, but then as the day goes on, they can earn other tickets, sometimes, for the established rules, or sometimes if I catch them helping someone, just randomly, but when I give them the ticket, I'll say, thank you so much for helping them with that problem, or thank you for giving them a pencil or whatever. And even if it's something that they, like our regular rules, I'll, still when I give it to them, I tell them what it's for. At the end of the day, all the tickets go in the basket, and then every Friday, I draw tickets and they get to spin the wheel. And it's anything from eating in the classroom, or we have high top tables at our school. So I got permission that's for the high school, but I got permission from the principal to be able to let my kids sit at the high top tables at lunch. So that's one of theirs. It's extra credit, a snack. I keep snacks in my room. They can get a snack. So there's all kinds of different prizes that they can get. There's a free choice. I try to come up with things that aren't super expensive, but things that they will like. And we have a behavior specialist in our county, and she actually presented the idea of the tickets, and then I added the prize wheel, and they love it.
That's awesome. But again, you're presenting something that you can give them every single time. So let's make sure that what you're giving them is reasonable. And I think you said you have high school students. I have fifth grade. Okay, fifth grade. So remember also, as Ms. Pham was saying, the time may differ. So that fifth grader may be able to wait till the end of the week for a reinforcement. Kindergartner may need to be a shorter reinforcement time. It may need to be at the end of the day. You know your students, but make sure that time frame at which you deliver is reasonable enough for them to work for it. So.
And if you're seeing the problem behaviors occur, you may not be reinforcing frequently enough. You might have to drop that down to twice a day, 3 times a day, maybe every class period. And remember, your reinforcement doesn't have to be huge. Most of our kids really just want connections with other people. It could just be spending time with you that's important to them, or a friend, or breaks from work. Those are big ones. But a token economy it's very, very effective when it's done well and when you have those good reinforcers. And I like what you said back there, the wheel, sometimes just the novelty of not knowing what I'm gonna earn is fun too. I mean, you think about that, we see like, oh, and you'll get your extra grab bag, which would you rather have? And you can go to stores and buy like this mystery paper bag, what's in it, and people do that, people like that. So sometimes it's the novelty of not knowing what I'm going to earn is fun for kids. Other kids may not like that. But again, that's why we spent so much time at the beginning of this developing those relationships with the kids. You really have to know them so that you can change their behaviors.
And your attention-seeking kids will like the opportunity just to stand in front of the class and spin wheels. They may not even care what they do.
Differential reinforcement can go along in the same lines with functional communication training. There's lots of different types of differential reinforcement. One is of the alternative behavior, differential reinforcement of an alternative behavior. And what that means is you're going to teach the child a different way to get what they want and reinforce that other way of doing it. Okay? So it can be, remember when we said at first, when the kid says, get away from me, we're going to give him space. But now what we really want to do is teach him to say, I need 5 minutes. Okay? And we're going to reinforce the I need 5 minutes, but not the get away from me anymore. I'm not going to get away from you if that's how you're talking to me. Remember, you can prompt them to say the right thing. And then when they say what you want them to say, then you give them 5 minutes. Okay? But this is a continuum of how you change behavior. You can't start with, I need you to say it this way, okay? The child may not be ready for that. You might have to start with honoring the way they're communicating now and then shape it into reinforcing what you want them to say and not the other, okay? Differential reinforcement of other behavior, this is a good one that I really like in schools also. What that means is I'm going to pick a target behavior, which may be getting out of your seat, okay? And I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And if you stay in your seat for 5 minutes, you don't do the behavior that we picked, I will reinforce you. You'll get some kind of reinforcement. So we set a timer for 5 minutes. They don't engage in that behavior, they get their reinforcement. If they do engage in that behavior in that time period, just set the timer back to the beginning and start over, okay? Again, that length of time is determined by how often they engage in those problem behaviors. So again, if they have those problem behaviors every 10 minutes, well then our time interval needs to be 9 minutes, okay? So they can get reinforced and feel successful. We can't say, okay, well this kid is causing problems 15 times a day. We expect him to do better than that, and then we're going to reinforce him. You can't do that. The kids have to have a little bit of success before they're going to buy into what you're doing, okay?
And a lot of you do it with your children. I have a child, I won't even say which gender or which one it is, but this child needs to eat so many times, so many hours, or they might get hangry. So I want to reinforce them before they get angry. So, you're doing it as well. Like I said, you're doing it already, but this is giving you context as to what that means in the behavioral terms.
Sure. And another thing that I do I did it with me first, and now I'm doing it with my daughter. We're starting a running program. Have any of you ever tried to start running before? Start doing some kind of exercise activity? It's hard. You can't start and say, okay, well, I'm going to start running a 5K when I've never done it before, right? That's never going to happen. But there's a Couch to 5K program that I used when I first started, and it's very short increments. You're going to run for a minute, and then you get to walk, and then you're going to run. And it reinforced me with that walking phase, because that's what I really wanted to do, is walk. So I did the hard thing, then you get reinforced with the easy thing, then you do the hard thing again. And for me, it started with that, literally started with I'm going to run for a minute, and turned into started with a 5K, then I went to a 10K, then I did a half marathon, then I did full marathons, and now I'm doing the same process with my daughter. So it's easier for her than when her soccer coach goes and tells her to run 4 laps around the field. That's hard because she can't do that. But if we start with little things and build up, you can do that. That's easier to do. Yes, ma'am.
So one thing that I notice when you talk about these things is that you kind of inherently, like with my sports staff, kind of inherently do some of this, but the DRO back 30-something when I was in school years ago, when we did DRO, they talked about a direct reinforcement of others' behaviors. So if you had a target behavior you wanted, you would say, instead of directing the attention to the negative behavior, you directed it to someone else's behavior that wasn't what they were doing. So you would say, I really like how John is sitting quietly in his chair, and then you reinforce the kids doing the right thing or the adults doing the right thing, so that the kids are then observing what that behavior is supposed to look like versus the no behavior. Because a lot of times it's combative with the no's.
Right, and that's another strategy, right? The DRO is just, if you don't engage in this behavior, I'm going to reinforce you. So, but absolutely, talking about what other kids are doing well will then remind the student, oh, well, if they're doing that, well, maybe I want to do that too. And yeah, that's great. So having having a good model of what behavior looks like, because you're right, not all kids know what it looks like to sit in my chair. And sometimes you have to be pretty descriptive with what that looks like, because if I'm sitting on my chair with my legs tucked up underneath me, is that okay? If I'm sitting on my chair but I'm leaning on the table, is that okay? Sometimes you might have to be a little bit more specific about what that behavior looks like. And if you have good examples in your classroom, acknowledging that may be a good thing for the other kids to see. Yeah.
Because your oppositional defiant kid will say, I'm sitting down. I'm on my knees, but I'm sitting down. You said get in my chair. I'm sitting on top of my desk, but I'm in my chair. My feet are on. Be specific, because they'll test you.
So the interruption and redirection can happen while the behavior is occurring, or if you know your kids well enough, most of the time there's some kind of precursor behavior that happens. Before the big explosive behavior, there's something that happens before that. Most of the time, there is some tell, and if you can't see it, you're probably not paying attention enough. It might be very small, but there's something there that happens before the big behavior occurs. If you can interrupt that and then redirect them to something else, you can avoid the big explosive behaviors that happen. And it can be as simple as, they're starting to fidget or push the table back and forth, and you can come over and just say, hey, did you watch that game last night? Something that the kid likes, you're interrupting the behavior, redirecting them to something else. And it might take you 2 minutes of talking about a basketball game or a football game to get their mind off of it, and then you can go back into teaching. And these things, that takes a couple minutes, but it's better than the time that it'll take to handle the big explosive behaviors. So stopping it, redirecting them to something else, something they like, or something that's kind of neutral, just something different, taking their mind off of it and going somewhere else.
We often say you can give the kids your time or they can take it. So if a lot of kids just need a modicum of your time, and it can build up, especially if you're going through all these blocks during the day. Sometimes you can help your teacher, your fellow teacher at the end of the day by giving them a little attention during the day. Instead of at the end of the day, they're just exploding. They're done. They didn't get any of what they needed. So now, I mean, all of you have probably been last period teachers. And so a lot of times you're catching the explosion of what they did not get during the day. Help those teachers out. Give them those students a little bit of what they need, and you're being not only a good teacher, but a good partner to your fellow teachers.
This one is reinforcing precursor behaviors. This is kind of sometimes hard for educators to wrap their mind around. Because sometimes those precursor behaviors are also problem behaviors. They're also behaviors we don't want to see. But we're talking about students that they'll tear up your whole classroom. They will maybe are a safety concern, safety to themselves, safety to others. We're talking about dangerous situations, dangerous behaviors that we can stop if we reinforce the precursor behaviors. Okay, so that precursor behavior may be, I'm kicking the table because I want your attention. Well, I may come over and get a lot of attention for that kicking the table because I know if I don't stop this here, we're gonna end up in a major meltdown. So I'm coming to reinforce this behavior. And you will have to figure out what the function of that behavior is so that you're giving them the right sort of intervention there. But I had a student once, and this was a long time ago, but he struggled with work and writing, and I'm sure that many of you have had students that hate to write, but he was struggling, and he was a student that was prone to tearing up the classroom. And he had to do this activity where he had to write his numbers 1 to 100. He had to write every single number 1 to 100, and he hated writing. So that immediately was a non-preferred task to begin with. But he started hitting the table and like really writing hard, and then he would erase, and then and you could see he was getting agitated by this. So to reinforce that precursor behavior, all I did was take it from him and I said, hey, I'll write it for you. You tell me what the numbers are. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, what's the purpose of this activity anyway? Is it just to see if he can count to 100? Does he know his numbers to 100? It wasn't a handwriting task. So I'm going to take it from him. I'm going to write it for him. He's going to tell me the answers and I'm going to write it. Okay? Now, we don't always want that to be where I'm doing all the writing for him. That's not what we want. But I'm stopping the explosive behavior of tearing up the classroom where he's hurting himself, and that behavior had gone into physical restraints before. So if we can stop it with me just writing, he's still telling me the answers and I'm doing the writing for him. Let's stop it there for now. Now the other thing that I would say is let's go back and look at the function of this task that he was doing. But if you can stop the behavior from happening, stop it. That's what reinforcing those precursor behaviors are. And I'm not saying stop it forever, but stop it so that people are safe, the student is safe, and you can continue teaching the rest of your classroom. And we need to teach this kid how to handle his behaviors also. But stop the behavior from happening. If you know how to stop it, stop it. The easiest intervention, and I know we've talked about this before, just change your response. If you've been doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and it's not working, you need to do something different. Now, there's a fine line between being consistent with the intervention that you're trying to put in place, but changing your response. Because most of the time, I mean, I see teachers that are arguing back and forth with students. That's not working. And if the student comes in and has the same behavior the next day, and the next day, and the next day, then what you're doing isn't working. Change how you respond, because we can't fix, like Dr. Chrisman said earlier, we can't fix their home life. We can't fix the divorce that's happening. We can't fix that mom's in jail today. We can't fix that their dog died last night. Those are things we can't fix, but we have control over ourselves. And we have control over how we respond to the students. That's the only thing that we can control, how we respond. So if everything you're doing and it's constantly happening and you are not changing your response, then you're part of the problem now, okay? And I think that sometimes you can see in your school, and I know that this happens, you guys can see where other teachers are the problem. I have been the problem, and I didn't know I was the problem. I had no idea. I thought I was doing the right thing. But the student continued to engage in the same behavior every single time. And the way I was responding to it just escalated the behavior. I didn't know I was the problem, but you know who did? The behavior specialist that came in to work with me. That behavior specialist right away knew that I was the problem. You can see it when you're not in it, but when you're in it, it's hard to see it. And when the behavior specialist, it wasn't Larry, I'm pointing at you like it was you, but when the behavior specialist told me, I was receptive to that information too. That's the other thing. You have to own that sometimes what I'm doing is not the right thing. But when you're in it, when you're working with these kids, it's hard to see that it's you, or that the way that you're responding is not getting the reaction that you want. Sometimes you need to slow down and think. Take the time to think about how you're responding to the behavior, because our goal is not to win. Our goal is not to show that I'm in control. Our goal is to help the student be successful, to avoid the tearing up the classroom, the flipping desks, the behaviors that can end up in a physical restraint. We want to avoid that. So how can we change ourselves in the way that we respond to make that not happen? Okay? That's the easiest intervention. And I'll tell you, my husband's also a teacher. Everybody teaches. That's what he told me. Whenever you're presenting to people, we talk about all of those fancy words and all of these little interventions that you can do. But he said, you know, the one thing that they need to know is what can they do right now to make the behavior stop. You know, yes, all of these interventions will help, but they won't help immediately. They're things that take time, things that you have to work on and teach the students. But this is the one thing you can do immediately that will fix the behavior maybe tomorrow. It depends on your relationship with the kids, okay? Yeah. All right, this is you. So we talked about this a little before. Kids who are okay don't act up. There's something else happening with them. There's some need that's not met. If you know your trigger, which most of us do, don't pull it.
We have to be the adult in the room, but we're human beings, and sometimes kids can frustrate you. So you know what their trigger is, you know what sets them off. Don't set them off intentionally. And it's human nature to do it, so we're not casting blame or aspersions here. Human nature would make you do it, but don't do it. You have to be the adult, and you have to maintain your stature in the classroom. If you're pulling kids' triggers, then they're not going to give you the amount of respect that you deserve. So just, you know what their trigger is, you know how to set them off. Don't do it. Just don't.
We've gone into classrooms and people will say to us, well, do you really want to see the behavior? Because I can show you. That means they know. They know what to do to upset the student. Don't do those things. If you know, don't do it. It's simple. And then our positive needs to be bigger than their negative. We need to be better. We need to be better. Okay? And sometimes, you know, Also, working with a team is incredibly important because sometimes, like, I may have had one of those major things happen in my life where I'm not in the place right now to deal with this because I'm having some really personal things happen in my life and I can't handle this today. That's why you've got to work with the teachers around you. Talk to them, be there for each other because everybody's not perfect all the time. We're humans. Some people have bad days, some people have bad years. And when that's happening, we have to be there for each other. You have to know that I can go to Larry and say, hey, I need 5 minutes. Can you please cover my class for 5 minutes? I just need to get myself back together. Know that and be that person for your other teachers too. Rely on each other, work together. Schools, teams, you need to be a team. You have to be. If there's problems in your classroom between adults, you need to figure out how to work that out because the kids will feel that. So our positive, ourselves, we have to be bigger than their negatives.
Yeah, there are times when you're exposed to it. Sometimes it's good to know times when you're exposed. But for those of you who've experienced loss in your lives, you're missing loved ones, sometimes during the anniversaries of their passings or during holidays. I know for me, I lost my dad. Sometimes it's around Father's Day. There are certain times where you're more exposed and less likely to be the therapeutic person that you need to be every day. Use your team. It is no discredit to you to use your team and be a good teammate when you need to tag in. Some of the schools I've seen do that I worked with even last year. They were amazing at that. So make sure that you have good teammates and you use your team when you need them. Okay, where are you in crisis? And this is important because sometimes we respond inappropriately because we don't recognize where we are in the crisis. We think it's talking about how did we get here? Understanding where you are with a student is important in terms of how you respond to the student. So if a student is showing anxiety, or this is the anxiety phase, this might be crying facial expressions, some change in the student's behavior. For those who make first contact with students in the morning, your job is so important because you might see things that come up a little bit later. For those of you who have ADHD students, a lot of times it takes a couple minutes. You can say, hey, they didn't have their medication today. Eyes a little twitchy, they're getting a little slippery in that seat. You can see some of the signals and signs. Therefore, it's your responsibility to react at that stage before it gets worse. If you see a student come in and they're very crying and they're emotionally distraught, you want to respond to that as early as possible and not let that situation fester into something more problematic. But by anxiety here, we're just meaning little small changes in behaviors. A kid that's normally very talkative is all of a sudden very quiet. Notice these things, and then that's where you're asking questions. Are you okay? What's wrong? This is the time where you're giving them time in the beginning instead of taking the time later. I know we have administrators in the room. They love to see teachers take that little bit of time so there's not a problem later and they're spending hours in the administrator's office. So notice these small signals. You make first contact with the student, you have a very important responsibility to be aware of the signals and signs they may give you while they're in an early phase of what may later become a crisis. Then in the supportive stage, they might be a little more agitated. They might even say some challenging things. They may ask some questions, or I don't want to do this today, or they may just push the assignment away. You see them physically acting, manifestation of them moving from the stage of anxiety to where you need to be more supportive of their behavior. Again, you want to respond at the lowest level so that you can help to prevent an explosion later on. So you might offer them help, listen. You might change the environment. They might need to go see a counselor. They may have a favorite person that they talk to, and you want to use this time to have an early intervention with the student before they begin to act out more. But understand that in the supportive stage, they haven't lost rationality yet, so that they'll listen. some of the things you're giving them, some things that make sense. They'll listen to you at this stage before they lose rationality. Because then when we get to the defensive stage, they're no longer rational. They're yelling, they're threatening you, they're cussing, they're pushing down furniture. You can't go to them at the defensive stage and say, hey, Johnny, if you do these 5 problems, I think I'll give you a break. No, Johnny don't want your problems. He might throw that pencil at you. You have to recognize where you are, because if your intervention doesn't match where they are in the crisis, then you're going to have an explosion. And if you wait too late to respond, then you're going to be in more trouble. So it's better to respond early than to respond too late. Look and notice the little signals and signs that they might be giving you. And this is not a situation where you can tell the student, I don't have time right now. You have to know your students. Because some of you who know some students, I told you about my IED student, it wasn't wait 5 minutes, it was bam, bam, bam. It was his face was red, it was he's yelling, and then he's fighting. And it was right there. So most students are not like that, but they progress more slowly. But we have to intervene as soon as possible so we don't allow the crisis or the situation to fester. And then it's more important even with students who change classes. If you're in a situation, your school changes classes, that student leaves your room in anxiety, he may escalate to defensive before the other teacher even knows what's going on. So it's more important that we be responsive as soon as possible and try and find out what's going on with the student. If the student is connected to additional services, it's also important to know what services do I have in my building. Do I have a school counselor? Do I have a STARS counselor, an at-risk counselor, whatever they may call it in your building? Is there a person, a preferred person that this particular student likes to talk to that will help them during a situation that may evolve into a crisis? Know the supports that you have in your buildings. And some of you are like, hey, I'm from a small district. I am the support. Well, then you may have to be the support. And it's better that you give them 5 minutes now than they're an hour later, and then the next day they're in detention or out of school suspension. But those little signs, just the fidgeting, the twitching, the talking when they normally don't talk, or not talking when they normally do. Noticing those small signs and intervening quickly can help you cut off a crisis. And it's important for people who see those students first thing in the morning, you're making first contact with them, you need to help intervene then, because again, as we have been repeating, the crisis may have started at home. And and it can present in different ways. Katie has a few stories, I do too, about bus drivers. Sometimes bus drivers are awesome. They're your early intervention people. One time I had a bus driver came to me at the end of the day and he said, hey, did he have a good day? I said, yeah, he was okay today. He said, I was worried, he said, because he was fighting his mom as he left the door and ripped off the screen door. I'm like, wow, it would have been good to know that before he walked in the building. But again, early intervention, knowing the information as soon as possible. One of the principals I worked for instituted something that was very, very wise. She had like 15 to 20 minutes where she had different students go to places where they needed help right before the school day started. Me being the behavior teacher, I got the students who had emotional behavior needs. So a lot of them would come to me 15, 20 minutes. I talk to them. We do a few easy activities, kind of see where their feelings and emotions were, ask them how their day went. And a lot of times from that, I would send several emails. I'd be like, hey, such and such, no meds today. Just letting you know. This kid looks like he's a little depressed today, told me about some things happening at home. You may want to be aware and sensitive about those situations. I was trying to be a good teammate instead of allowing that situation to blow up in their room. So being first responders, if you will, those who make first contact with these students, be aware. It's good. A lot of times the teachers, your principals, administrators will tell you to meet the students at the door, shake their hand, talk to them. That's a good time to assess them. They say that's what on airplanes, they're assessing us as we walk in, who might be a problem, who might be helpful, who might be agitated, who might be a little too drunk already, so they're assessing us as we walk on the plane. Assess those students as they walk into your room. You don't know how helpful your early intervention might be and what it might prevent. What are you communicating? Verbal is your words, I think they say, but 85% of what you're communicating is not your word choice. It's the nonverbals, your posture, your proximity, the paraverbals, your tone, your pitch, your volume. All of those things matter. And if you don't think they matter, I'll give you an example of a sentence. Sentence someone gave me is like, I didn't say that we would kill him. It depends on how you emphasize it. Said, I didn't say that we should kill them. That means somebody said it. I didn't say that we should kill them, which means they think somebody should do harm to this person. I didn't say that we would kill him, which means we mean them harm, but maybe not to the point of death. I didn't say that we would kill him. Well, maybe they're on the rampage to get somebody, but maybe not that particular person. But it's all about the tone and the emphasis of how you say the things. And you watch your proximity. I'm a big guy. I have to be careful about my proximity to students who are small, because then I may not be communicating what I think I'm communicating. So I'll use an example. If I step to somebody, and she knows me, so I can do this. But if she didn't know me and I'm this close, she's probably like, why is he so close to me? I need him to back up. And I'm sitting here talking, but she's not hearing a word of what I'm saying because she's wondering why I'm so close to her. So we have to be aware of our proximity. That means your height, your size, the student that you're dealing with, their ethnicity, how where they're from. All of those things may be different based on the student. So you have to be aware of all those factors that can impact how you communicate. So be careful, because you may not be communicating what you think you're communicating. So be very aware of that. De-escalation strategies. Now, a de-escalation means we're about there. We're there. And these are some things that can help you to not further the crisis, okay? Break the unmet needs cycle. What does that look like? Because all of us have unmet needs. Some of you all, you didn't get your coffee this morning. You were here, it's the summertime, got out a little early, didn't get to swing by Starbucks. You have an unmet need when you came in the building. All right. So how do we break that cycle? Let's say a student comes into your room and they have an unmet need. So they engage in behavior. He's mad at his last teacher, and that teacher just frustrates him, and he didn't get his frustration out. So he walks in your room, slams his book bag against the chalkboard, against the dry erase board, and that's how he expresses that he has an unmet need. So what do? All right. Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to say, pick that up, try again, walk out the door and try again.
That sounds like us. Let's see what this, and I try to find a picture that looked like that. And you don't do that in here. I don't know who you've been talking to or who you've been dealing with, but you don't act like that in my room. Some of you are smiling because you do that. That's not happening here. Okay, so the student has an unmet need, engages in behavior, and then we respond. So what does the student do? The student responds with an additional behavior. You're not going to tell me what to do. You're not my mama and all of this. So now they responded, you responded, and then it keeps going back and forth. Their behavior leads to your behavior, and then guess what? You're in the middle of a power struggle. You're in a power struggle. Don't power struggle with kids. There's no more simple way to say it. Just don't power struggle with kids. You're giving credence to whatever they're upset about and whatever they're frustrated about by engaging in the power struggle. Nothing is moving forward. Nothing is being helped. You're not helping them. They're not helping you. It just goes round and round and round. And again, because you're the teacher, you might win, but what does winning look like? At what cost does winning happen? I'll tell you, one of the most freeing things that happened to me as a behavior teacher is I came into the realization that I can't force a kid to do anything. That is a freeing reality. I cannot force a kid to do anything. So that absolves me of some responsibility as it relates to our kids, because I can't force them to do anything. And I don't want to. I want to incentivize, I want to encourage, but I cannot force them to do anything. And then when we try to force kids to do that, we get caught in that power struggle. But instead of engaging in a power struggle, this is what we should do. We should attempt to just address the need. How do we address the need? We ask the student, what do you need? What do you want? What is happening with you? You ask them questions like you would do one of your colleagues. I can pick with my Oakland people over here. If Jonathan comes in Dr. Hughes' office and throws his clipboard down, she's not going to say, boy, you better pick that clipboard up. She's going to ask him what's going on. And I, who will be married 24 years in December, if my wife comes in and throws her purse down, I'm not going to say, you better go out that door and try that again. You know, I want to remain married. I enjoy being married. But why does Dr. Hughes respond differently to Jonathan, and why do I respond differently to my wife? And the simple answer is, I care about them. And why do I treat the kid the way I treat the kid? And I didn't like the answer to this, but it's the truth. It's because I can. I can treat them that way because I'm the teacher, because I have more power, and I do not have to give that student empathy. So I'm treating them that poorly simply because I can. And that's a hurtful answer, to think of a kid who may need you more than you realize. They're your student, but we learned during COVID, they're not just our kids. We're not just educating them. They need our emotional support. They need somebody who encourages them to do better. They need somebody who helps them to experience success in their life, because sometimes they don't have that anywhere else. You're more than just a teacher. And when you begin to realize that, you'll treat them like more than just a student. But we have a responsibility as it keeps going around, to address the need, to ask what's going on, to try and find out what that student needs in that moment, instead of just domineering over the student and telling them what they are and are not going to do. What does addressing the need look like? It gives you some examples here. What's wrong? Listen, show empathy, be an ally, treat them like a friend or spouse. Ask this question and go to the next slide. What do you need when you're in crisis? What do you need? What do you want from someone when you're in crisis? Somebody raise their hand, just let me know.
Somebody to listen to me.
She said somebody to listen. Somebody to listen. You had your hand raised?
I think one thing that we fail to do, what you want, like someone to listen, and someone tries to fix your problem. And even with our students, oh, well, maybe if you hadn't done this. No, we need to talk about, yeah, that stinks. Yeah, I understand why you're hurt, without fixing the problem, without trying to explain the problem away.
Empathy, yes. Listen, show them empathy right here.
I feel it all the time. If I'm upset, I don't want my husband to come home and tell me what I should have done. That's not what I need right now. I just listen to me, just tell me I'm right, and even if I'm not, it's okay.
All the people who want somebody to tell them to calm down. Go ahead.
I personally want space. I don't think we give our children space
Right.
for them to realize that something's actually happened. We're always there, you need to calm down, you need this, you need that, instead of just giving them space and say, just give it a minute, and then have them collect
space,
themselves.
it's like you're rushing them. I need you to calm down. I need you to calm down right now. I need you to do your work. Can I get a minute to breathe? Can I breathe for a minute and process this, instead of you standing over there trying to push me through this crisis?
I agree totally with Giovanna. We work in the same school, but I mean, I need that space first. Let me calm down. And kids come to my room and they lay out. We have bean bags in our school. They lay on the bean bag for a few minutes and then they get to de-escalate, and then we can listen. But first, because I need the space first. It's give me time to just get myself together before I say something I shouldn't say. So,
Right.
I mean, I think the kids need that too sometimes. They're not ready to voice what's.
If you're coming to talk to me, you know what happens? Then I start to cry. And I really don't want you to see me cry. So give me 5 minutes. I will get myself together and I'll be okay. But I just need that some time before I can talk about it. Yep.
I was going to say that also it also depends on what knowing your kids, because like one of my kids would need space, but then the other just wants you to sit with them. And like maybe it's not talking and maybe it's not space, but it's just like sitting and like having someone else in their presence.
Absolutely. And one big thing about that giving space though, definitely give them the space, but also tell them, I'll be back in 10 minutes to check on you, so that they know that you do care, and come back. If you say that, definitely come back and check on them. And they still might not want to talk to you, but at least they know that you are there.
I had twin boys. One of them, I could say something and he could see disappointment in my voice and he started crying. It's done. He's ready. The other one, I had to say something and then I might have to say something again and I might have to say something again and stay on them. Again, identical DNA, but they needed something different. Now, see, this is the problem, though. As teachers, what we do is we tend, and not just as teachers, as human beings and in relationship, we tend to impose what we want on what they need. Because we would need this, then we impose that on each other. And I'll tell you, the number one example of this is when it happens, it's in marriages. You didn't know you were going to get free marriage advice today, did you? What happens when the person who wants to talk deals with the person who needs space? You have to respect each other. Maybe you give the person who needs space, but then the person who needs space also needs to come back and talk to the person who needs to talk it through. You have to respect what each other person needs when they're in crisis, because when you don't respect it, then the conflict escalates. When the husband that needs space or the husband that wants to talk, gets in the face of the wife who needs space, then boom, we have explosiveness. Yes.
I have always worked with elementary students, and I have found that sometimes you have to find out what they think's going to happen. I've gotten upset, or I didn't have my backpack, or I didn't finish the test in time, and they explode. Let them calm down, and then say, well, what do you think is going to happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? And a lot of times, their idea of what's going to happen is so low on the spectrum, and when you get that conversation over with, and then they can go, oh, well, I thought I was going to go to the principal's office, or I thought, you never know what they're thinking. So sometimes we forget to ask them.
We need to walk them through the consequences. I had a student who, the first day of school, he was upset all day. In fact, it was my intermittent explosive disorder kid, so I was on edge. Read all day. And then I didn't understand it. Then later, like in the day, maybe about fourth or fifth period, I had a conversation where I discussed, my kids and their grade levels. And he said, I thought you held me back. He had been frustrated all day because eventually, obviously, we must not have had that conversation. And he thought he had been retained in the 6th grade because we hadn't discussed consequences and what was happening next. And he was in fear and apprehension of something that didn't even exist.
And I have that conversation with one of my daughters a lot too. Like, she has a whole lot of anxiety. And it's, well, okay, this happened. What's the worst thing that can happen because of this? Really, think about it. What's the worst thing? Okay, let's prepare for the worst, but then what's more likely to happen because of this? And once she does it much better on her own now, but once she could work through that, it was much easier. Just, you're right, it's the unknown of what's gonna happen because this one thing happened.
But the next slide just gives you some examples of some of the things that you've already said. Space, time, someone to agree with them, some of those things. But the next thing is creating positive reactions. The key to that, we can move on to that. The key to creating positive reactions is that we have to speak to someone or treat them based on the reaction that we desire from them. We don't just talk unintentionally. We should speak intentionally and treat students intentionally based on the response that we want to have. We have some people who may speak harshly, or I don't understand people who wake up wanting to fight, but apparently there are some people, if they want to fight, I'm going to fight with them. I don't understand how that attitude is helpful. But if you put that out, that's what you get back, because there are kids out there, they will fight with you, some of them literally. But you need to address them in the way that you want them to respond. And some ways to do that to create positive reaction, again, that's what that's discussing, is validate feelings. I say validate feelings, not facts. That means you might not agree with the facts of the situation, but you can understand the feelings. So if my 7-year-old kindergartner breaks his pencil and he thinks the world is over and he starts crying profusely, I can talk to him and discuss, hey, I know what it's like to feel frustrated. Maybe not about a pencil, but I've been frustrated too. I've broken things, I've lost things too. You can validate those feelings without validating the factual situation that they're involved in, but a lot of times they need their feelings validated.
And this goes back to just thinking about, what do I need to do? How do I need to respond to create the reaction that I want?
That's right. Flow with the force. Don't engage in the power struggle. Don't keep fighting. Sometimes you just need to go with the force. A kid gets up, examples given, kids gets up to go sharpen their pencil. It's not the time to sharpen pencils. Am I going to tackle the kid? Is that what we're doing? I'm going to walk with the kids, say, hey, we're going to sharpen the pencil today, but tomorrow we're going to wait till we raise our hand and get permission. Okay? So flow with the force, yield to it instead of resisting it all the time. Again, the question, what hill do I wish to die on today? All right? This is how you do it. Again, you're validating feelings and you're going with the force instead of resisting the force. Give them choices and help problem solve. All right, the last few I can breeze through pretty quickly. Four short sayings I live by. These are things that I didn't invent, but things that I've learned in life. One of those things is, keep going. Know thyself, know what you're able to present, know what your level is for the day. Know how much energy you have to give. I say this in all of my trainings. I mean it, and my administrators usually support it when I say it. If you're up to here before the day starts, that might be a good day to take an emotional day off, because you're not going to be any help to students. You're not going to be a help to your teammates. You're going to cause problems. You might lose your job. Okay. Know when you've reached your level of frustration, and don't bring that to work and put that on someone else. All right. Every day is a new day. I used to hire the assistants that worked in my behavior room. I used to interview them, and if I had certain questions, and if they didn't give me some version of that answer, then they were not hired, because I need them to know that each day is new. If they said, well, I gave them an example, like, what if a kid cussed you out at the end of the day? And they said, well, the first thing I'm going to do when I catch him in the morning is we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to tell him that's not appropriate. Okay, maybe we need to let some things go. Maybe you need another job, but we gotta release it. You can't come to school on Thursday mad about what your kids did on Monday. That's not good for you. And the kid is young; they're healthy. You're raising your own blood pressure, and you're going to have all kind of health impacts if you do that. Every day needs to be a new day. Every child is someone's baby. Every child is someone's baby. I tried to find the cutest baby I could find. I want you to think of that face when you think of dealing with children. Every child is someone's baby. That child is the hope of that family. You've heard this before. They don't give you the worst kids they have. They present you their best. Remember that when you're dealing with our students, even those with emotional and behavioral issues. Rapport is so important. Not just rapport with the students, but you also need to carry rapport with the parents. Please, please, please call parents when you have something good to say. Please call your parents when you have something good to say. If your parents answer the phone and they say, oh, what did he do now? Then that lets me know you're not having enough positive communications with the parents. Have great rapport with the parents. Have great rapport with the students. We're going to make mistakes, but I'll tell you, rapport covers a multitude of mistakes if you have rapport with that child and that student. The last three things I want to tell you, and these are perspectives. This is how we need to think as we approach each day. Don't stay married to old versions of yourself. Katie mentioned this earlier about a process that didn't work. Just because you were this in one stage, don't mean you have to be it in another stage. Everyone should desire, I want to be a better teacher this year than I was last year. So just because you've done it before doesn't mean you need to keep doing it. The giraffe, the turtle, and the grasshopper all have perspectives. Don't allow, if you're a giraffe, don't allow a grasshopper to inform how you behave and how you act. A grasshopper shouldn't be telling a giraffe what to eat, what to do, how to act, how to live. Make sure that once you've gotten to another version of yourself, you're not letting old versions inform how you live and how you behave. And the final thing I want to share, the apple in the orchard. I want you to look at your students, not just as an apple, but understand they have seeds inside the apple. The seeds inside the apple do not produce apples. They produce apple trees. So that you always have something greater in them than they are themselves. Treat them like that. Help them grasp their possibilities. And not only will you treat them better, you'll understand that you're also an apple and you'll treat yourself better. We appreciate your time, guys, today. We hope that you've taken something from that. Again, I'm Larry Crispin. This is Katie Fan, and we're grateful that you had an opportunity to speak with you guys today.
And I do want to draw your attention to one of the references up here. It's the last one. That's Robert Hudson. He works at, it's not up there, Greenbrier, I believe, is the name of the place in Alabama. And he really, a lot of what we talked about was based on the training that we got from him, and his school is a residential school in Greenbrier in Alabama, and he is fantastic. There's lots of speaking that he does. So Glenwood, I'm sorry, I said Greenbrier. It's Glenwood. That website is up there, and you can get these slides, but I really recommend looking at some of the training that he does because it's really, really fantastic.
All right, thank you, guys.
I'm overwhelmed with warm feelings toward this team of presenters today because this has touched my heart, filled my mind, and energized me. Hopefully it's done the same to you.